G'day guys, welcome to this episode of Ask Pete Anything. Sorry it's been a while since I've done one of these. I had an interesting question recently which made me think I should get back on it and start making these episodes again. So this question comes from Estefania from Spain, who asked, why are red kangaroos so ripped? Why are red kangaroos so ripped? And to be ripped, as well as the adjective buff, ripped and buff, just means to be muscly, to have a lot of muscle, well-defined muscle. If you're ripped, it tends to mean that you're incredibly lean and that you can see the muscles of the person really well. So they're like a bodybuilder. Bodybuilders tend to be very buff, which means they're big and well-developed. And then if you're ripped, it means that you can see the muscles really, really well as well. So yeah, if you have a look at pictures of red kangaroos, especially red kangaroo males, the big males, they tend to be ripped, like absolutely ripped. The same size arms as a human, you know, they're huge. They're huge guys. And what are the reasons for this? So male kangaroos, particularly grey kangaroos and red kangaroos, compete for control of a mob of kangaroos or a mob of females, and a mob is a group of kangaroos. So M-O-B, it means it's just a group word that we use for a group of kangaroos. And you can also use this for people. So especially in Australia, you might hear people refer to their friends as, hey, you mob, or oh, I'm just going to go out with my mob of mates. It's not especially common, but I definitely hear it from time to time, particularly if you go out in the country. So anyway, a recent study was done by a group of researchers at Murdoch University, and they identified several possible criteria for sexual attractiveness in red kangaroos. So several different aspects of the kangaroo that females may choose to reproduce with that male because of those characteristics. And they found that forearm size, so the size of the kangaroo's forearm, was the key factor, so the main reason in that male's ability to find and keep a mate. Find and keep a mate. And a mate, in terms of biology, a mate is a member of the opposite sex or the opposite gender of your species that you can mate with, reproduce with, have sex with. Mates tend to pair together to have offspring together, no matter what species it is. So if you're a male or a female in a species and you're trying to find a partner, that means you're trying to find a mate. And it can be a verb as well, so you would mate with your mate. So you'd reproduce with your mate. So young red kangaroos play fight when they're growing up, so they do this all the time. They spar, they grab each other, they kick each other, and they do this in order to try and improve their fighting skills as well as put on size. I imagine they're trying to exercise. It's their way of effectively going to the gym. And by doing this, they sort of establish their dominance. So they can, if one of them is winning a lot of these sorts of fights, then obviously he's more likely to be the male that grows up to be in control of a mob or dominant over the rest of those males. So strength and aggressiveness are clearly important when competing to be a dominant male. And so male kangaroos establish and maintain their dominance hierarchy by having these sparring contests. So when they spar growing up, they're practicing to be good fighters effectively. And then just like you would see in boxing or in the UFC or any of these kinds of fighting competitions in humans, if you want to claim the title and be large and in charge effectively, if you want to have the title, you also have to defend the title all the time. So not only do you have to get big enough and strong enough and quick enough in order to win the title, and in the case of kangaroos, be in control of a large mob of females, but you also have to be continually defending that title. So large male kangaroos have to constantly be fighting off other male kangaroos and defending their females and their mob of kangaroos, because they obviously want to mate with these females and pass on their genes. So What's really cool is that when you see these kangaroos fight, you'll see where that cliche or that stereotype of kangaroos being really good boxers or kickboxers comes from. So you'll notice that they grab each other using their forearms, and then they sit back on their tail and give a double kick. They kick with both legs at the same time into the stomach of the other kangaroo. And so this is how they sort of establish who's stronger, who's more dominant. And it's so funny because when they use their forearms to grab onto their opponents, it looks so much like the clinch in Muay Thai or in boxing or in MMA, where you see two opponents who are humans, obviously, grabbing onto one another's head and bringing their elbows into the position that's called a clinch. And so it's so funny to see this mirrored, to see this sort of happen as well in kangaroos. And one thing I also wanted to mention was that kangaroos are known to have killed dogs and injured people, so they can grasp and drown dogs underwater. I've seen videos online, and I'll try and link it here, where if a kangaroo is getting chased by a dingo or by a hunter's dog, it often looks for a small pond or a dam, or it just tries to find some water. It enters the water, and then if the dog follows the kangaroo into the water, the kangaroo will actually grab the dog around the neck with its forearms and force the dog's head underwater and try and kill it. It's just insane. I've seen a video of that online. And they also have been known to disembowel dogs and disembowel other animals that attack them. So disembowelment is where you effectively open up the stomach of an animal using a claw, or obviously in humans a knife. And so kangaroos are known to have killed dogs that attack them by just leaning back on their tail and kicking with their legs, and being so powerful that they've actually opened up a dog and killed it that way. So it's so funny that they are kind of, cute and cuddly animals, but at the same time, they are very, very, very dangerous. So, yeah, just like humans, they try and gain larger muscles, but it's funny because these larger muscles seem to come at a cost to their survival. So there are things in biology and species called trade-offs, and a trade-off is where you achieve a balance between two desirable traits, or two desirable but incompatible features. So, for instance, if you want to run quickly but you also want to be strong, it's a trade-off between how fast you can run and how strong you can be, because you can't be a really, really huge bodybuilder or power lifter who's also incredibly quick at running, or at least who can run a long distance, I think I want to say. So you can't run long distance and also be a bodybuilder, because both of those things require completely different forms in the body. If you want to be a bodybuilder, you have to gain muscle and be really, really good at short bursts of energy. Whereas if you want to run long distance, you have to be incredibly lean and hopefully as small as possible in terms of muscle, to be able to run a long distance without getting tired like you would if you were really, really big. So that's what a trade-off is. And in the terms of the kangaroo, the trade-off is being really, really big, really, really strong, and being able to mate with a lot of females because you control a mob. But the trade-off is that you don't live as long. So that's the trade-off. It's interesting that you can be big and muscly, and I guess humans are sort of the same. Bodybuilders don't tend to live to an age of 110. But in terms of biology, obviously, this doesn't matter so much, at least in terms of life longevity, because if you get to mate with a lot of females and pass on your genes, then it's not really important that you live a long time. Whereas if it requires you to live a very, very long time before you can pass on your genes, obviously you need to live a long time or you're not going to reproduce. So one last question you guys might have could be, how do they get so much muscle when all they eat is grass? So this is something that I always found interesting when I was studying biology. And it was like, why do herbivores, and herbivores are animals that only eat plants, why do herbivores tend to be able to get big and muscly, at least in terms of species like cows or kangaroos here, they only eat grass, but some of them get huge. You see some of those bulls, those male cows that we use for meat, and they get massive, and all they're eating is grass. So herbivores have obviously evolved to put on muscle through diets that are solely based on plants, because that's all they eat, and they still need to produce muscles. And it's partly why they have to eat so much plant material. So there's several reasons why they have to eat so much plant material, and then this is why you see cows eating so much during the day, and the same with kangaroos and the same with koalas. They are pretty much always eating. And the reason for this is that in order to get the energy that they need to fuel their body, they have to eat a crap load of plant material because it's so low in energy, at least the single units, compared to, say, eating another animal as a carnivore would. 2, it takes a very, very long time to break down when they do eat it, so they have to eat it and then have it in their digestive system for a long time before they can get the energy out of it. And then obviously 3, they have to get the protein only out of that plant source, and so plants aren't particularly high in protein compared to, say, another animal that a carnivore is eating, and so that's also why they have to eat a lot of plant material. So I guess that's ultimately why red kangaroo males are so ripped and so buff. They grow up fighting. They fight to compete for control of females or a mob of kangaroos, and larger muscles are much more attractive to female kangaroos as they indicate a strong, healthy male worth mating with and having offspring with. So I might just define some of those words that we've heard again in this episode, just so that it gets a little more ingrained into your head. A trade-off was a balance achieved between 2 desirable but incompatible features, so it's a compromise, a trade-off. A mob is the group word that we use for kangaroos, so a mob of kangaroos, but we also use it in Australia to talk about a group of people. So you could say, hey, you mob, what are you up to? A mate in the case of biology is a sexual partner for an animal. And it can also be a verb, to mate with something, means to breed with, to have sex with, to copulate with, to reproduce with. Ripped means to have well-defined or well-developed muscles, so to be muscular. And if someone's ripped, especially in the gym, it means that they don't have a lot of fat on them. So they can be incredibly big and you can see all those muscles really, really well. Buff, on the other hand, means sort of the same thing, but you can be buff without being ripped. So what does this mean? If you're buff, it just means that you're big, you've got a lot of muscle, you're well-developed muscle, but you may have a thicker layer of fat under your skin, you might be a bit fatter, and so you can't see the muscles as well. So that you can be buff without being ripped, but most ripped people tend to be buff, meaning that they have large muscles whilst also being ripped. And I guess a few more interesting facts about red kangaroos. The species name is Macropus rufus. Macropus rufus. So the genus name at the front there is Macropus. Macropus. And this means long foot. Macro means long. Pus means foot. And this is Latin. And rufus means red. So long foot red is what Macropus rufus, the species name for red kangaroos, means. They're distributed all throughout the arid zone in Australia, and the arid zone, if something is arid, it means that it's a dry environment that doesn't get a lot of rain. So the arid zone or the arid environment in Australia is the desert, so the central part of Australia. And the red kangaroos are found all throughout the central part of Australia. So they're not only the largest species of kangaroo, they're also the largest living marsupial, so the largest existing marsupial in the world. And their legs work like rubber bands, so when a kangaroo hops, it's their Achilles tendon like we have in our body as well, and this tendon stretches as the animal comes down on their feet, and it builds up potential energy which allows them to then leap, jump, or hop forward. And when they do so, they can cover up to 8 to 9 meters in a single jump, and they can jump as high as 3 meters, which is pretty insane. You know, if you think of a 3-meter board that divers jump off, these kangaroos can jump 3 meters high. The average kangaroo, or the average roo, as we call them in Australia, is 1.5 meters high, which is about 5 feet. But males can get up to about 1.8 meters high, which is my height, 5.9 feet tall. And they can weigh up to 91 kilos. 91 kilos. So almost 100 kilos. They're getting close to 100 kilos, some of these males. And that just goes to show just how big they are. I weigh something like 75 kilos. So a large male kangaroo, a large male red kangaroo, could weigh more than me. And just to finish last, they can hop up to 65 kilometers per hour, which is 40 miles per hour. 65 kilometers per hour, 40 miles per hour. To put this in perspective, Usain Bolt, the fastest man in the world at the moment, his record for fastest foot speed, so the fastest speed at which he can run on flat land, is 44.7 kilometers per hour. So that's almost 20 kilometers. It's more than 20 kilometers slower than a red kangaroo can hop. And 44.7 kilometers per hour is 27.8 miles per hour. So almost 30 miles per hour, almost 45 kilometers per hour. Anyway, that's probably long enough for today, guys. I hope it answers your question, Estefania. I hope you've learnt a lot of different things today about red kangaroos. And if you guys have any other questions that you would like me to do an Ask Pete Anything episode about, again, it can be about anything you like, whether it's kangaroos in Australia, about something you just want me to find out or to research and then answer and make an episode about, then feel free to message me or comment on something on Facebook or on the website, and I'll do an episode as soon as I can. Until next time, guys, all the best.